Right, are we ready? Yes. Okay, yeah. Now I want to welcome Halldor U from Iceland. I think he will tell more about himself. Yes. Glad you are here.
Thank you.
Good.
Hello. So I feel I should qualify myself a little bit to you natives because I'm a tourist in your environment. My talk today is about that project, Halldorophones, humbly named after myself. But I also feel a kind of license to talk about the finer points that I find interesting in relation to that project. Maybe start at the end. It's always super beneficial for me when a new person gets to know that instrument. And today Max Lilja is with us. And we actually haven't had the conversation about how he approaches it, how he likes it, what he finds lacking, etc. We're going to do it live, first time for you, my friend. So I look forward to that. But I think we'll do that at the end. And the structure is going to be, and I will try to stay succinct and on topic. I'm going to talk about my personal, what's personally most interesting to me about that project. Then I'm going to get into the technology and the design. And then we'll end with the conversation with Max. I studied here in Helsinki. I studied fine art, visual art. Somewhere around halfway through my degree, scrambling for material to be a visual artist, as visual artists do these days, I somehow hit on a rudimentary instrument that was the precursor to this thing here. To solve that assignment that was very open and unmanifest, I started another degree in the design school, which was here next door, still is probably in some form, but is moving away, which was then called TAIK and is now one department of Aalto University. So I'm a visual artist and designer. And on top of that, I'm kind of tone deaf, and I've never studied an instrument. And it's to the extent that I can't even remember music. So if Lauri was some kind of devil's advocate here today, I might be your way to define some diametric opposite to what it is that you do and are, which might be good for a young association like NIMiMS. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, having said all of that, what makes me interested in that thing, which is pretty much the only thing I do as an artist. I also work for the Design Academy, or the Department of Design at the Academy of Arts in Reykjavik, Iceland, where I teach pretty dry stuff like computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture. I part-time teach a little bit in the fine arts department, and to your great pleasure also the music department, which I might talk about a little bit later. But so what I do as an artist only revolves around that. I do maybe one project per year, sometimes two, which I feel are contributing to the body of works that I consider to be my own, in some sense that I'll get into a little bit more now. So this is going to get a little bit personal and maybe emotional, I don't know. It's the artist way. How do we look for inspiration? What is it that drives us? In my case, this was a big figure in my growing up. Do you know this guy? Gaston Lagaffe. So it's a French cartoon figure who is this dreamy inventor who doesn't do his job at all and just kind of always working on his various projects and inventions, manages to destroy every practical aspect of what's meant to happen in his place of work. And that's his gaffophone. which is this Stone Age harp, and every time he plays it, he like knocks down a wall or drives out the big boss or does something terrible. This was partly the inspiration for naming the thing. And then of course I heard about more conventional namings that follow the same logic, like saxophone. So Halldorophones, they've been around for a while now. This is an early one, and I'm not going to get into what it is just yet. I just wanted to show you some more examples than this. And I think for you to start to kind of understand what it is or what it could be. Yes, I'm going to play you one very short piece, and because I have time, I don't have so much to say. I think I'll just play it through. So this is Hafdís Bjarnadóttir, the composer who is sitting at the mixing desk. This is her piece for Halldorophone and accordion in 2011. And this is a good access point to talk about what I'm doing in relation to this. This is at the National Gallery of Iceland, and this is back from the time when instead of, because this has generated the interest of musicians from about the time that I started. People are into it, it's gimmicky, it's something new, and they want to get involved. I know a lot of pop artists, or let's say that my friends from high school were pop artists, and the Haldorophones were used often in music for kind of whooshy wave that exported from Iceland around the turn of the century. But this is from a little bit later, when I had started to formulate that, like, yes, I am some kind of agent for an instrument, and my objective or my job is to promote it. And so I moved a little bit away from the poppers and a little bit towards new music. And then I started to be adamant that there was one conventional instrument paired with the Halldorophone when compositions were made, just to juxtapose some realness with the silliness, to kind of try to raise the profile. Then when this started to become some sort of accepted phenomena, the narratives that I have become interested in get a little bit more sophisticated. So like I said, I do projects with people, I invite composers and instrumentalists to use this, as long as I like them and respect what they do musically. The product of that is theirs, obviously. Anytime I instigate a collaboration, the music belongs to the people that create the music, and I celebrate that, that's normal and wonderful. But what I do, actually a method that I understood doing this work. Elektronmusikstudion in Stockholm is this known and loved institution, a kind of hub for experimental and electronic music in, let's say, Europe or North Europe. And I picked up on some kind of vibe. I've also been in this sound art circuit for the past years, that participants in that scene, sound art, experimental electronic art, revere that institution well beyond the actual facilities that it offers. It has more significance, whether it's real or just some kind of aura of greatness, like the Chelsea Hotel or something like that. So I became obsessed. I decided, yes, I have to go there, and I have to take the Halldorophone and I have to smear it all over the place to get it in there, to associate it with that place. And what I wound up doing was this collaboration with these two performers and composers, focusing on the kind of most romanticized analog synthesizers in the place, and did this kind of mini portrait of the institution at the same time, which is then this kind of installation. It's a kind of, let's say, motet form, where the two voices call to each other, and the idea is that the viewer cannot see both voices at the same time. You have to commit to one channel, and that's how it should be exhibited. But this is a method, and this has now become something, somewhat of a series, which I could informally call the Halldorophone dates famous electronic music instruments. And just for fun, because I had a conversation with somebody, some of you at the bar yesterday, where we were talking about Jouni and his innovative instruments. The second work that conforms to what that series intends to do is this composition by Swedish composer Johan Svensson for a Jouni instrument called the Dimier from 1974, if I remember correctly. 70. It has a notoriously difficult interface. It's so convoluted that it's almost impossible to play to any real extent. Playing it is Jari, who was the condition for me being allowed to borrow it from Kai at the electronic music studio that you guys have been at, or next door to. And he really saved the project because he's a fantastic performer, and he's nerd enough that he could like really get into the interface. But there's another layer to this narrative, is that it's filmed in the Sibelius Museum in Turku. And now I'm talking about the narrative, which is the thing that I can most strongly relate to. Looking in from the outside, I've picked up parts of your, and I mean musicians, vocabulary and sensibilities, and what the rituals are, what is accepted, how you conduct yourselves, how you think about what you do. But I very much see it from the outside, to be clear. And what appeals to me for, in this, let's say, the latent narrative of this work, is the juxtaposition of Halldorophone, the Sibelius Museum for Musical Instruments in Turku, and the Jouni scene. And the, let's say, unspoken story of those elements being put together in that context. And I don't feel I have to say anything more about that. That's just some impression that you have depending on what you know about the place. I will add one thing. That museum is absolutely ridiculous. It's the face of about 4,000 musical instruments that the Finnish government has the responsibility to, what's it? It's conservation and preservation. It's preserve, I guess. They don't maintain them in playable condition, but they have to store them. So this is just the front office of some warehouse, and they don't do anything. They just kind of put them in there, fluty-like things in the same vitrine, stringy-like things in another vitrine, and then they just open the door and let you in on Monday. Which appeals to me because it's this kind of, now I'm talking too much, I'm explaining away the mystique of it, but it's this try-hardy approach of this project to get into the history of musical instruments. And I'll just show you towards the end here, where it's really pronounced. Oh, I like this. This is probably my favorite shot. The master is watching over the ceremony a little bit. And then it's just a shrine to Sibelius also, so you actually have like his cigar cases in vitrines. Oh, and there you have the string instrument collection. Some of them don't have any signifiers as to what they are, from when they are, from where they are, etc.
Can you put some volume? Sure.
More. And as you can see there, the Halldorophone has arrived in history, found its own vitrine, entombed with that unfortunate player. The levels are extremely low. We might get a boom next time. Okay, so that's, let's say, this is artistic me. This is what I do as an artist, those narratives. Then most of the time I'm just solving practical problems, you know. Like arrange for it to go somewhere, work with somebody, some institution invites something, or a festival, and you know, and you do this, what do you call it, the office work for yourself. So it's unfair if I would say that there is nothing else going on. The Halldorophone is also a design project. And now I'm going to switch mode a little bit and talk about what it is and how historically it might survive as its own thing that has something to add. So it's electro-acoustic string instrument. As you see, it's loosely conforms to the layout of a cello. The Halldorophone gimmick is feedback. It's just sustained, let's say, infinite sustain, and the thing is built to facilitate that. There is some interesting stuff that happens when the strings, let's say, open, start to affect each other when you have the channels open for feedback. You get some unusual things that sound very organic and you wouldn't readily get with another kind of instrument. What's happened is that, could you turn it on its side? A friend, can you flip it on the other side? A friend, early cellist composer who worked with this instrument suggested that, she's a drone musician, which is cool these days. She suggested that it would be good to have a second set of strings so that she could keep drone going consistently as a kind of baseline for flourishes on the top set. So now Halldorophones, it's been decided, they have 8 strings. Each string has a pickup, so you get good channel separation, which means you can like volume in and out what the drone is doing, and maybe if we show the panel here. But since this could easily spin off into a kind of complicated logic, I'm doing some, can one say, paternalistic experiments with the ergonomics of this instrument, where it's just been decided that you have sliders on the instrument for the upper set volume, but for the lower set you have to have a mixer or volume pedals or something to work with them. There's no sliders on the instrument itself. The vote isn't in on if this is the permanent way it should be, but it's trying to, yeah, it could get easily very complicated. If you have a lot of stuff on the instrument, then, you know. It can be both. It can also be played, could you maybe raise the volume on one string just to demonstrate? Yeah. So, theoretically, it can be played without bowing, even if that's maybe not very practical or gives a good range or control. Okay, I'll backslide a little bit. From the first part of this talk, where I'm super conscious of the narrative or the feelings, the associations that people make to this project, the visual identity is a big deal. It has enough reference to classical string instruments that you identify it as part of that tradition, and it has enough newish stuff that you identify that it's something new by just looking at it. And this sets, let's say, normal people off into a spinny vortex of positive associations with all kinds of connotations to genius and high culture, you know, which is exactly what we need to get a good career in fine art going. Yes, to complete the feedback, you need some generator, obviously. So pickups go through preamps into power amp to speaker. So you resonate the body, the vibrations travel through the instrument, the sound, the body becomes a kind of filter that has its own preferences, and then back through the bridges into the strings, and then you get this closed loop of the feedback we all know and love. Here, so this instrument is missing something that will come back. It's been a little bit contentious that I made these, let's call them kind of tremolo bars for the upper set of the first instrument, which was my graduation work from design school, where you could tension the strings without touching them. So they would stay open, but you could tension them to maybe what comes to about a third when fretting. The first person, my good friend who was working with that instrument, hated it. So in the next one I left it out. I actually moved it down to the lower set, but nobody uses it there. And now when people have worked with this instrument and then they see the first one and they try that, about half go like, oh, that's fantastic. Why isn't it in this one? So I predict that might come back. You would have these bars here that you can kind of tension the strings without disrupting the feedback by fretting or something like that. And I think it might be time for the third part of this presentation, where my first question to Max might be, with the lower set, what do you feel about having the tuning machines where they are now and in that configuration?
You can actually bend a little bit, yeah, the resonance right now, which I found kind of amusing. I mean, first of all, I only had a couple of hours with this baby, so I'm not a master with this. I'm still learning, and I'm trying to figure out what would be the most efficient use for it. Because for me, it's I try to consider it as a new instrument, not as a cello-like something.
Bad cello.
Not as a bad cello. And it's, well, many seem to compose cello-like stuff to it. And I'd rather try to find its soul, if there is one, and work with that. But yeah, back to the tuning.
Or yeah, specifically, like, I mean, the idea, my idea here, which might then not hold water, is that for the resonating strings, that you can tune them or detune them or tune them on the fly. Do you think that's something that you would use?
Occasionally, probably, but as also for the main strings, there's only certain notes that really keep the feedback going. So you can't really, you can maybe go third off.
Yes.
But that's about it. So that's the range for adjusting the tuning. Unless, of course, you amplify it somehow, and that might work.
There's two schools of thoughts on how the Halldorophones should develop from where it is today. One is that you should have flat, across the range possibility to drive the feedback. By integrating band stop, band pass filter, and something like that, maybe some trimming on the power, so that you can just get the volume going on whatever note or whatever you want. I'm leaning towards that maybe it should just be difficult. It just should have really strong wolf notes and just be a bastard to play that just wants to do its own thing.
Now it's it has its own tuning.
Yes, where it wants to be.
It has its own modality.
Yeah. I have a good friend in Reykjavik who is a respected builder of classical string instruments, but he's also an innovative and modern person who is experimenting quite a lot with. For example, he has explained to me that during the Baroque era, when these classical string instruments really came into their own, when they became super well refined and kind of exploded upwards through Europe, the aesthetic features are just copied from the architectural style today, from the Baroque. And actually, the acoustics of these instruments benefit from the fact that they're made asymmetrical on the inside. And my friend Hans Johansson has made a violin that he calls a violin for the 21st century, which has decidedly modernistic features, the aesthetics of the instrument. And it's asymmetrical, which is the strongest thing that you relate to. And in a blind test, his experts, his colleague experts, could not tell the difference between a very decent 200-year-old violin and his 2-year-old modernistic bleached wood monster. And in conversation with him, I think he also recognizes a little that I might not be, I might not have the capacity to bring it home to a let's say, well-balanced, decent temper sounding instrument. He has suggested that maybe this project is more interesting if it is just allowed to be this kind of wild card, where I don't fight the roof tones, which will always be intrinsic to that shape box and size box for the, let's say, about cello tuning, and that this would be just one of the kind of characteristics.
And also, I don't know if you can really ever get there like steadily, because position of the bridge will affect it too, and that will change. And yeah, the wood is alive, so it will, by the time it will change anyway.
It's true. Yeah, it's still being considered.
Sorry, it would be nice to hear examples on the things you are talking about.
Yes. Do you want to try some scale or something, or just improvise a little?
I can demonstrate a little bit of what's happening here, and some of the control options that I've found, how to control the beast, how to control the feedback. Because here it's kind of a, you have to reverse your thinking. Because this is actually playing when I'm not playing, and when I'm playing, it's not. So you really need to find the point where you can go go either way, otherwise it takes over. And as we talked yesterday, well, I play a little bit. Let's start with something. You see, now there's no feedback with these notes really. Bring it up a little. Yesterday, like in between of music and noise and what's happening there. So I would see this is highly useful for the modern film music. Because you really cannot tell what this instrument is if you hear the sound. It sounds somehow familiar, you cannot name the instrument. Mentioned the control options. Here you can actually use the bow to stop the noise instead of playing it. And then it comes back again. So it really, I mean, for me it's probably much easier than for, let's say, a regular cellist, because I play with the effects all the time, so I'm already trained to think different.
Can you demonstrate something you found with your effect boxes?
Well, yeah, first of all, the resonance strings, they actually work without these. Here also the tuning is very important. This is now tuned as cello. You can also use different tunings, but around this it works kind of well.
I can suggest something, sorry, that one of the two composers who has revisited this instrument and composed for it twice has suggested that a third down from the cello standard might be good for the feedback. It's more responsive.
Could be. We pimped this a little bit with Jari a couple of weeks ago, and now it's much better than before. So, but yeah, usually if the string is lower and looser, then it resonates easier. So now the resonance strings are tuned. I think one down from what I have here. So you can use the pedal to control the volume of it. And I only plugged in now 2, because I think that's plenty. You can do a little nice vibrato with it. You can add another one there. That's now the highest resonance string. And then the low one. And you can of course play acoustically here on top. Some effects. And now that's only the lowest resonance string.
maybe we should invite questions before we run out of time.
Yes, what kind of wood is that? It's lovely.
Do you mean the top of the?
Yes.
So.
And does that have much of an effect on the resonating
Yes,
potential?
it's some sort of rosewood. That box is a collaboration with a luthier friend. I wanted to experiment with that. I'm a decent craftsman when it comes to these things, but I don't, for example, maintain a workshop with all the tools, etc. So this was a try for that. To be honest, I don't know specifically what kind of rosewood. And obviously it affects the sound. It's a bit heavy. The one that I built when I graduated from here was with you know, the spruce, maybe the stuff from the Balkans that's in all the good instruments.
Spruce.
Yeah, which is much lighter and brighter and really affects the sound.
And I noticed you have a flat
Top. It's not arced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would the difference be if it were like a cello?
The cello is a beautiful piece of engineering. Its curved belly is taking a load that's actually quite incredible, given the thickness of the material where the load is coming. And so the dome of the cello is structural. I mean, yeah, if you get into like really the top tier of what these things are doing, it affects the sound in some way that I couldn't articulate. But for my intents and purposes, like if I make a dome with this, I have the same amount of control over the sound. It's a decent resonator. The body is too small for the intended tuning, which explains partly all the move tones, and the really kind of manneristic response of it. Yeah.
And one last question. I think you've already answered it. I wondered what that motorcycle accelerator was for. Is it for these vibrato?
No, it's just to keep the instrument the right way, so it emulates the body of the cello.
But you make
I
a nice
am a good designer.
secondary
Yeah.
use of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite comfy.
This was an early complaint. It's because apparently cellists do that. Place the cello.
Wow.
More?
How much do they cost?
How much you got? To terrorize you even further, I've been invited to apply for a PhD program in music technology, which means that infiltrating your field even further, possibly.
Don't worry, recall that Leo Fender, the inventor of the Fender electric guitar, he wasn't a musician
Oh,
either,
okay,
so
yeah.
you're in good
Good,
company.
good, very good. Yeah, I'm actually reading. Who was talking about Moog? Was it you yesterday? I'm reading Analog Days, which is kind of the rise of the Moog synthesizers, and now I'm thinking how I can kind of, if there's something I can emulate to kind of get some traction. And if I do that PhD, it will mostly be practice-based, and dissemination will be the kind of main thing. Finalize the design, roll out a few, and then figure out ways to just get them out there and get them used as much as possible.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
How's the kind of the ergonomics of the sliders and things? For you?
It's kind of cello.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the controllers.
With the ball, yeah, it doesn't really work as
Yeah.
the cello because the body is in the way. But it's not the cello. And I mean, you get the sound, but it's not really. You can do something with it, but if you want something like this, better use a cello.
The logic of the sliders on the right-hand side is that it's likely that you wouldn't be using the bow at the same time as the sliders.
Have you considered other configurations?
Yes.
I'm thinking, sorry.
Foot pedals.
Yeah.
Yes. With that, I mean, there's been one major modification that the first version of that panel had knobs, but the sliders give you visual feedback. And then the instrument we saw with the accordion didn't have any onboard controls at all. The idea was that it just had like a tail to a mixer, and that everything could be set up on a mixer and then you would use pedals. Or, as it turned out, it was often the composer or some kind of wingman that was doing the live mixing. So I think ergonomics, there is a fair amount of options for control, and I think it can spin out of control quite quickly. So some sort of separation logic like here, that like upper set is hands and lower set is feet, might be the thing.
Or just put everything MIDI control.
Leave it to the robots.
I have one question.
Yes?
Did some specific piece of music inspire you to build this?
Yes. When I was a first-year art student, I met an exchange student from Norway who was doing circuit bent instruments, one of which was pretty great, and the way to control it was with a piezo that was kind of a feedback trigger for the whole, which had then like a huge, let's call it a filter, which was quite random, interesting. But I enjoyed playing that thing. The sound and the temper was quite harsh, and something clicked in my brain where I said, oh, maybe string feedback would be more smooth and something I could play not. It's easier when you don't play anything, any instrument, to play something that's already going, like the logic of the feedback, you know, it, kind of it helps you along. So in my second and third year of art school, I was literally taking access to guitars and building early versions of what then turned out to be this.
All right. Any more comments, questions? All right. Thank you, Halldor. Good. All right. Now we are almost exactly in schedule.